Why did
Jesus was talking about Islam. He says, worship the one and only true God. That is Islam.
Okay.
He says, follow me, listen to me, obey me. That is Islam. Because you follow and submit your will.
to God?
It's not about hearing. It's about making understanding of what you've heard, conceptualizing it and affirming what is true and rejecting what is false. If somebody says that you have a tail and it's wiggling, and you affirm that you don't, and you reject that claim, people can say many things about you, many things about the world. So you need to be, as an individual who have intellect and reasoning, to come to the realization of whether you are a creation of a creator, or you just there, part of this cosmos and no one made anything. No one made
We have so many. I've heard of Islam. I've heard of Buddhists. I've heard of Hindus. So which one actually is the right one?
Yeah, which one? I'm asking you, how do you know which one is the right one? What are you using?
Say the same thing.
It's not about people say so. If I gave you a book and it says, this book says, Matti, you have to give all your money, your wallet, your car keys, your house keys, your bank account details, everything. And it says it's from God. Are you going to just simply say, yeah, I have to? What are you going to use to determine what is true, what is false?
Because I haven't really read the Quran and the books that the Hindus use, or the books that the Buddhists use, so I can't really know. But they all, based on what I've heard, they all have the same belief that there is God. They all have the same belief of good and bad.
But is there a God who created the universe?
I haven't really seen him.
Have you made a criteria to know that there's a God? You have to see God. Is this what your modus operandi, your particular way of thinking is? For me to believe in something, I have to see it myself.
But because you're being told about this that you've not seen and you've not experienced, so how do you actually know the certainty and how credible it is that this entity exists?
Yeah, so we're talking about criteria of knowing something and having that confidence within us that yes, what we know is true.
In science, for example, if in the laboratory you're being told about oxygen. Now, you don't see oxygen with your physical eyes, but when experiments is ongoing, you could feel the presence of oxygen. But God, for example, we've been told that there is God, but then there is no physical, do you understand, no physical proof.
You're giving me an example in which you are doing some experiments, and the experiments then, from it you infer there are oxygen there, because that's what happens when two things react and so on. That's why oxygen was there. You, even though haven't seen oxygen molecules yourself directly, but you're inferring by what it does, the effect it produces and so on. Why don't you use the same methods that you just applied there? Can we infer by looking at the effect God has as a cause, as an originator on the things there? If we can see that there are effects that demonstrate that there has to be a cause behind it, a God behind all of these things, therefore, just like oxygen must be in existence, likewise, Creator, God, must be in existence. This is the comparison would be fair. So when we look at, for example, how things are so much in their precise design, in their complexity, and precision design doesn't just pop out from nowhere. It requires a precision designer, an engineer. So if the whole world, whether it's from the animal kingdom or from the plant kingdom or the physical laws that demonstrate all of these intricate laws that we see in operation within our universe, physical constant in the universe, this is the evidence of a lawmaker, a lawgiver, a designer. Why do you fail to see the connection?
But then we're talking about a being that is here. Like, for example, when I've heard, I was talking to one of your guys, when he said God said this, God said that, it meant he spoke. It meant you could hear him. So how do you hear him? How is this always heard?
You're now going into the nature of this creator. Let's do some thought experiments to understand something. Do you understand conceptually if somebody says nothing? Nothing means, if I were to tell you nothing means the absence of everything. Absence of matter, time, space, fluctuations, possibilities, absence of everything. That's what I mean by nothing. And something is like you and me, your bottle, your shoes, yourself, the books you're carrying. This is something. Now, from then, can you infer that at one point in the past, it's possible there was absolute nothing, and then something came? Is it possible? If there was nothing to begin with, which is the absence of everything, can it result into something?
I mean, if you look at science, for example, like with science, if nothing exists here, there could be scientific explanations that something could come out of nothing.
No. You've been misled by popular science writers. I can call it science fiction writers, right? Lawrence Krauss, and science journalists like Richard Dawkins, and various others. You see, if something pops into existence in the quantum world, you're doing a PhD on subjects like that, right? So he can explain to you in more detail if necessary. Things don't pop into existence while it was non-existent. Because if you are non-existent, you can't pop into existence. It's simply nonsensical. You have to be there to pop into, transform yourself. So what they don't tell you, that these are virtual particles, which means they have some existence. They don't have the similar properties maybe of actual particles. So they transform from one world to the other, one form to the other. But they're not non-existent. I'm talking about things which are non-existent, nothing. There's no existence whatsoever within this nothing. Yep. From this, can you get something out of it? The answer is, according to every human being with a sound mind, and these science journalists or scientists and professors, whatever, they will agree. You can't get something from this absolute nothingness. It's simply absurd, because it's nothing there to bring about, to make into something. Energy itself is something. So energy transforms into matter, energy into energy, and so on and so forth. Different kind of energies, it transforms. So if we are something now, every reasonable individual, whether they're scientist or historian, whatever, they will acknowledge and affirm they always have to be something. There will be never a time in the past where there was absolute nothingness. Now here is the problem for the atheists who don't believe in a creator. They now believe in the eternal, continuous existence of something. The question now is that something that is always in existence. It wasn't something that it acquired something from other than itself, properties that it possesses. Because something that exists, it exists with properties.
Okay.
It doesn't exist in vacuum with nothing. It's not that it's like something gave it energy, something gave it a decision-making process and so on. It inherently possessed it.
Okay.
So we are talking about something that eternally exists always without any beginning, inherently possesses energy, power, inherently possesses the decision-making properties to make something, do something, as opposed to not. Yeah? To bring about this universe, it was a decision.
Okay.
Imagine if I sit there, I don't make any decision. I, of my own volition, if I don't make any decision, I'm not going to move until someone pushes me or something like this. Newton's first law. Right? If objects are in a motion, they won't change direction unless other forces comes and changes direction. If they're in non-motion, in a fixed position, for example, nothing can change it unless there is a force. But of course, Newton's law was misunderstood. Recently, we came to know that there's always forces involved anyway. Okay, so we're talking about other forces that changes this direction. People misunderstood Newton's first law for how many years? 200-300 years almost, right? 200 years ago. Okay, now then the particular phrase that he talked about it in Latin, we realize. But my point is this: if there is someone or something always in existence, didn't decide to transform something into something, like bring about this universe will never come to be. Never.
Has anyone ever seen this thing?
So you're still going back to the nature of these things. You see, look, firstly we have to affirm that there has to be something that exists always.
Okay.
Once we affirm that, the next thing we ask is, what are the qualities and attributes of this something? Is this self-sufficient? Is this something that is, as opposed to contingent, something that is necessary? We are all contingent, dependent. We're dependent on air, on food, on oxygen, and so on, and from someone to bring us into existence. You could have been taller, or shorter, or fatter, and so on and so forth, right? But because you are in a certain things, there are certain choices being made by something. Okay? So that's what I mean by you are contingent. You could have been another way. So the originator of everything must be a necessary existence, who is not in any way, shape or form dependent on anything. Cannot be. Because if you are dependent on something, what are you dependent on? And it goes on like an infinite chain of regress. You can't just go on and saying, this eternal existence which brought about this universe was dependent on another one. And that thing was dependent on another one. It goes on like this. Mm-hmm. If you have this kind of causation, this universe will never come to an existence. It's like, I'll give you an example to illustrate this point further about this impossibility or absurdity of this regress. Imagine there is a shooter who wants to shoot a criminal there, and the only way he can shoot is when he gets the command to shoot. Okay? The one behind him. The person behind him can give him the command to shoot if the person behind him tells him, shoot. And he has infinite number of people behind him. If there are infinite number of people behind him, would that person who's about to shoot would ever get the command to him?
No.
Never. That means this person will never be shot. This universe, in its current state, will never be in this state if there were infinite amount of causes to our universe, without any end. The fact that we are here, the shot has taken place, it's not infinite amount of people. The universe is there in its manifestation, it's not infinite amount of causes. So that means there is one cause behind all of this universe, which is the first and the foremost cause. Before him there is none. This is the eternal necessary cause. Self-existent, self-subsistent, self-sufficient. That is something that makes sense. Rationally, intellectually, reasonably. So that's what we're talking about, a being that exists, which brought about the existence of this universe by a decision-making process. That means it has a will to say, like this, the universe is going to be like this bubble of this universe in the multiverse, whatever, if you believe in multiverses. If you have will and transforming and bringing into existence things, you have energy, you have power, and you have knowledge, because the world demonstrates the evidence of knowledge behind how it's created. The knowledge of the laws that are in operation in the universe, the physical constants, laws of attraction, and so on and so forth. The laws which we call electromagnetic force and so on. All of these are precise laws, okay? Demonstrating the knowledge of implementation of this law and application of this law. This is what we talk about, the necessary being who is absolute, independent, self-sufficient, and there can only be one of them. There cannot be two of these things. There can only be one of those things. If there are two of these things, then there will be conflict of will. Do you understand a conflict of will? Imagine two of them. They are self-sufficient. They're absolutely powerful. Absolutely powerful means they have power over everything, including over each other. So one of them can destroy the other, and the other can destroy the other. Do they have the power over everything? If one of them is destroyed, then he wasn't self-sufficient, absolute or powerful. The one who's able to overcome is the one who's power over all things, has power over all things. Give you an example, easy to digest. You have a car, two independent steering wheels. You sit on the left and you sit on the right. He wants to take the car this way, and you want to take the car that way. Same car, two independent clutch, gear, steering wheel, and everything. Where's the car going to go? When you are independent of each other, you don't listen and you don't compromise. You are independent. You are sovereign, sovereignty of will. Is the car going to go that way? Because if it goes that way, when you wanted to go take the car that way, what's going to happen to you? You're not in control. If the car went that way, you're not in control. If the car didn't go anyway, none of you are in control. Yeah? This universe demonstrates there is only one originator, one independent controller of our universe. Otherwise, everything will be in chaos and ruin. Look how everything is so organized. The laws in nature, how they're so precise to the 22nd or even more decimal places in that precision. Laws, physical constants, gravitational constants, Planck's constants. You know, when you talk about science and physics, this is how precise they are. And this is why everything is like this, operating within this cosmos in a very organized way. One originator in control, one absolutely in control. That is what the evidence is about one creator, one God. So your question is, okay, now I understand all of this. How do I understand that this being...
But some religions believe in multiple gods, like...
Then you would know from these examples I've given you, these religions or religious ideologies are irrational, unbelievable. They believe only by blind faith, gut feeling, or peer pressure, or family beliefs of their forefathers. It is not a belief to be believed by individuals with critical thinking.
I mean, I think it's Hinduism, or they believe in...
Any belief which believes like that, you know it's a false belief. Because it's a belief that goes against reason, rationality, and evidence.
They themselves would claim that their belief is right.
Hang on. The example I've given you, the impossibility of existence of two absolute beings, in existence. If they believe in something like that, then you know that this is a false belief, because this cannot occur in any reality. It simply is nonsensical to believe that. It's like saying, I believe that God exists and God doesn't exist at the same time. I believe in married bachelor. I believe in a triangular square. Let me give you some example. Do you know what a triangular square is? Can it exist in reality?
No.
Can a triangular square exist in reality?
No.
Why not?
Doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. Because a triangle is with three sides, three corners. A square is not three sides, three corners, four sides, four corners. So you can't have a triangular square.
Well, according to them, they believe the different gods have different functions. One is responsible for the rain, one is responsible for the sun.
So they're demigods, and they can be totally destroyed by one god who's more powerful than it. There can only be one god which is the most powerful. That means all of the other gods are false gods.
Okay.
Yeah? Because if they can be killed, in fact, that's what they say. Let me give you an example of the absurdity of a belief system. One god.
Somewhere in Hyde, they believe in about 20 gods.
Okay. And you know that could be that is false. Because it doesn't make any sense. One god appoints his son as a guard for his wife to stay and not to mess around with their chastity, whatever, right? Something happens, he came back and he realizes this son, God, his son, Ganesh, could not protect the flirting around, whatever, the bad things he was supposed to protect from his mother doing, or his father's wife doing. God, the father God, becomes very angry, chops the head off of his son. Then he regrets and realizes, what have I done? Goes around, the first thing he sees, I'm paraphrasing this story. You can go and search about it. It's all there in black and white. He finds an elephant, chops the head of the elephant, puts the elephant head in his son. And there you go, now you have Ganesh. If you go to Wembley, Southall, Green Street, you'll find, go to a jewellery shop. We're buying gold, right? You will find, this is the speaker's corner for you, dramatization. You will find there is a statue of Ganesh, half elephant, half man. That's the god of economics. Yeah? They believe in that. Next time you go to Wembley, Southall, Green Street, Upton Park, all these areas, go to a jewellery shop and say, can you show me a picture or a statue of Ganesh, please? I'm interested. And they will show you. That's what they worship. And that's the story behind his... And you and I will say, this is not reasonable to believe. God, who's supposed to be almighty, all-powerful, absolute, independent, self-sufficient, sovereign, he gets killed, chopped off. And he has a father, a mother, and they fight you to kill each other. Islam, become a Muslim. Islam is the only rational religion, reasonable way of life that invites people to this realization, to this truth. There is only one creator, one God, yeah, who is worthy of our worship, of our praise, of our thanks, of our gratitude. That is, in Arabic, we say he's Allah. The word Allah is such a unique word, you cannot make into a feminine, you cannot make into a plural, you cannot make any of these things like, God, goddesses, and godfather, godmother, nothing. So even the word itself, your heart will be content to call upon Allah, but you know He's the creator, the originator, the sustainer of everything that exists. That is what we're saying is how you can affirm the truth by using the rational faculties and the revelation that God sent. So when you say there's so many different religions, different belief systems, how do we decipher the truthfulness? We use our critical minds and critical thinking, and we scrutinize their scripture.
With the same critical mind, it still doesn't really give that... Like, let's say if you believe that this exists, how does this look like? What actually does he have? 2 heads? Does he have 2 hands?
Exactly. Good question. God tells us in the Quran, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ. There is no likeness unto His likeness whatsoever. But He is the one who is all hearing, all seeing. So whatever you imagine, God is not like that. But He has His own reality, which is unlike everything. He is the one who sees and who hears. He's the one who communicates. He's the one who sends revelations. He's the one who forgives people's sins. He's the one who accepts people's repentance. So there are characteristics or qualities or attributes of God that are expressed by Him for us to understand, so we can relate to Him. He's not an abstract entity. He's a creator who has attributes and names. So you cannot speculate and work out by yourself how the creator is. The only way you know, the only way the finite can know the infinite, about the infinite, when the infinite tells us about himself. So when the creator absolute tells us the limited, that's only when we can know about himself.
So those that had him and those that wrote the Quran, how did they hear?
Very good question. So now we're talking about how does this originator of this cosmos communicate to human beings or any form of creation. Okay? One of the form of creation or communication is by appointing someone from within us, most noble, most upright, most truthful and reliable individual, and passing this information through him to the people. That way, when you receive this information, you have less of a reason to disbelieve and reject that message, because you would know that person is a truthful individual, is a reliable individual, is a trustworthy individual, is an individual of a noble character. If a smoking person tells you do not smoke, you will say, look who's advising me. The one keeps on smoking and tells me not to smoke. The one who is stealing tells you don't steal. You would not heed onto this message. But when a truthful individual, look, when Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for the 40 years of his life, was known in his community as-sadiq al-amin, a truthful, trustworthy, reliable individual. When at the age of 40, God appointed him as a prophet. He didn't make himself a prophet. God appointed him.
God appointed him.
Yeah, God communicated to him through an angelic medium, an angel called Jibreel alayhi salam, and conveyed the message of the Quran, which is the revelation, the speech of God that he's going to convey to the people. When he came to the people and he called them, and he says, look,
Dreams, or was it true? Did he hear the physical? How did he hear?
he saw the angels spoke to him and conveyed that message. Like, this is what you should recite as the recital, the communication, the scripture, the book from God. So when he came and he says, oh people, listen to this historical information very, very attentively. If I told you there is an army, whether it be army of horses or camels or elephants, whatever, if an army were to come and they're waiting behind to attack you, if I told you that, would you believe me? You know what they said?
If an army is about to attack, and
So he's there. Look, there's a mountain behind. He's on the top of a mountain, a hill. He calls the people. He says, "Look, if I told you there's an army behind me, there's an army waiting to attack you. If I told you that, would you believe me?" What do you think their response was? They said, "Yes, we will believe you. Like we always have. You are the most truthful one. We've never known you lying." They testified. They have no reason to accept him as a liar because he's always been truthful. When he said, "Now I tell you that God has made me a prophet, abandon the worship of all these false gods," that's when they started like, we're not going to be, because now the status quo is now being affected. The Meccan economy is all about, the business is about people coming and paying homage and money and gifts to all these false gods. And he's saying, stop worshipping all these false gods because there's only one God. None of them. These are all false gods. You made yourself. Idols you have made and carved by your own selves. That's why they started rejecting him. But they affirm, we would believe if you said so.
But the thing is that the way you would say that this noble person had God, that's the way these other religions say they had God as well.
You should not conflate other religions. Each religion needs to be scrutinized and assessed individually on its own merit.
So what did they hear then? What did they hear?
No. God is not someone he's going to speak to everyone individually and telling you know what, I am God, this is what I'm expected you to do. Right? Imagine I came to you. I want to show you the methodology of what seems to be fair, reasonable, and something that universally that we can all agree on. I came to you, this brother came to you, each claiming that I have received revelation from God. And God said X, Y, and Z. And the example I gave you before, you know what? You have to follow exactly what I say. First, start with your car keys, and your wallet, and your phone, and your bank accounts, and so on and so forth. And I'm saying, God has told me that. He's made me a prophet. People can claim individually. You would say, but how do I know you're a prophet of God? How do you know he's a prophet of God? There'll be chaos and corrupt, there'll be a huge mess if people were to have this kind of mechanisms. So God, what he does has throughout human history, one of the forms of his appointing a prophet and a messenger or communicating his message is by appointing a prophet in office. Someone will be called a prophet and he will be given proof and evidence to this message. So when the prophet came, prophet for example Moses alayhi salam, when he parted the Red Sea.
So there was another prophet called Moses.
There were not a nation that went past that didn't have a warner, because God is just. He sent prophets and warners to all nations, telling them what is.
There are multiple prophets, basically.
Yes. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the finality of prophethood, the final messenger. No other prophet, no other messenger after him.
All these other prophets, they had different messages.
No, they had the same message, but the laws and regulations may have been different according according to the needs and dictates of the nation at that time. But the message that there is God, God is one, God created you to worship Him, there's heaven, there's hell, all of them is same, consistent throughout.
Which other prophets apart from, because the only one I've heard you mention is Muhammad. Which other?
I mentioned Moses. Let me mention to you Abraham, Jacob, Solomon, David, Noah, Jesus. All of them are prophets of God, peace be upon them all, mentions in the Quran. He mentions some of these prophets and he hasn't mentioned some of these prophets, but he says all nations had warners. So what we are saying is the Quran, like the previous prophets and messengers, they had evidence of their messengership to the people so that people can believe in them and in the message they has brought. Whoever believed in them were the successful one. They would have a life here in success and the life hereafter, the final life, the ultimate life, the eternal abode in hereafter, in paradise. That's where they will have their abode in. So Quran is simply drawing our attention to that this is the finality of God's message. Final book called the Quran. There will be no other prophet after him. Whether law-bearing or no law-bearing, like the Qadianis believes, like the Nation of Islam and the Baha'is, whatever, no other prophets from God. The prophethood is sealed. Quran is the last book from God, and you have to follow that message and no one else.
Okay. How long ago was that last prophet? How long ago was it?
Yeah, 1444 years ago, something on this line. He was born in 570 Christian era.
That their own is that they've heard from God as well.
Just as I explained, there are people who claim to be from God, like Joseph Smith of the Mormons and so on. You can look at their claims and you can look at their revelations, and you can easily reject it by critical thinking. Critical thinking. Yeah. To give you an example, there's a person in India called Mirza Ghulam Ahmed. He claimed to be a prophet, and he made his prophethood on the criterion of his prophecies. He says, if any of my prophecies are failed, I am a false prophet. And we have many, many prophecies which were false and failed. Because of what he claimed, his criteria, we know he's a false prophet. But there's still people adhering to it blindly because they have false, blind, emotional allegiance to individuals. Like somebody can take you as God on earth. Louis Farrakhan, have you heard of this name? Louis Farrakhan, Nation of Islam? The black people in America, they consider him God on earth, a black man. This is how this affiliation of, emotional affiliation, emotional allegiance lets people to believe in nonsensical things. We say the Quran opens up the heart and the mind of the people to think critically and reject, using critical thinking, using our intellect, all the false beliefs, false prophets, false revelations, or adulterated, corrupted revelations from God. Because remember what I said earlier, there were prophets and messengers sent in the past. Some of them had books. That means what we have today, if it doesn't talk about what the Quran talks about exactly, these were distorted, these were changed, altered, and they were adulterated. And we know that by looking at these books. If you think about Christianity, Catholics, Protestants, Egyptian Copts, different number of books. They differ not in like one sentence, the number of books from God. Look at the differences. That's how they corrupted their books, by adding to it, taking away from it, or altering within it. The Quran actually tells them, woe to those who write the books with their own hands and say it's from God. Woe to those who do this and earn a miserable price because of this. Okay? So the Quran gives falsification tests. Quran gives positive evidence that is from God. A person of critical mind, all they need to do is look at these tests and see whether the Quran stands, applied on these tests are applied, and it stands, on that test, and it stood the test of time. When the Quran says, if a book from God, like this Quran, if it wasn't from God, talking about history, prophecies, natural sciences, and all these things, you would expect many discrepancies, many errors, many contradictions. That's what we expect. Imagine you write a book today, right? You talk about the history of the past 5,000 years ago, what the people did, what they had, their belief system, their culture, and so on. You talk about science of today. You talk about what's going to happen a few hundred years, 1,000 years later. Now, I know you're going to make lots of mistakes because you don't know everything. You're not a jack of all trades. You're limited with the knowledge of our time. Even though you're so smart, you mastered all the science and arts and history and humanities. Because we are ever learning and changing in our knowledge of things, what we knew 100 years ago, we know now different through our scientific revolutions and scientific developments, for example, or discovering things from history. What we knew earlier has changed. Things about what Newton said, Einstein came along and talked about another reality of within his discoveries and his laws that he came up with. So 500 years later, we might be learning about our world in a different way than how we used to know. People thought the earth was flat one time, didn't they? A person who wrote it at that time, they would say the earth is flat, because that's the only thing, all the scientists are saying the earth is flat. But later on, today we will say that person, of course, is not a prophet of God or anything, because he's just copying what the people knew at that time and thought that was the truth. So if you write something like this as a human being, it's quite obvious. 300 years later, your errors will be quite manifest. And this is what we see of every written works. In the Quran, the contrast is obvious. It talks about all these things, and yet it is totally universal in its message. You can't find a mistake in the past or in the future when the future unfolds to become present. You can't find a mistake about the natural phenomena because it's coming from the one who is the creator, the all-aware of this universe. That is the difference and distinction between how we can affirm and believe in a particular world belief, an ideology or a religion. So Islam is a religion of the critical-minded people. Islam is a religion of the people who use their senses, of the people who use their intelligence, of their aql. And Islam is the religion of people who seek the truth. So when you are seeking the truth and you apply all this criteria, you cannot but accept it. That's what Islam does to the people. It removes away from the enslavement to pop culture, celebrity culture, believing in things because it's the fashion of the time. I will believe whatever people believe. I would just don't care about anything. It will free you from the slavery. Slavery to worshipping a pop star, a footballer, or a celebrity, or a singer, whatever, and it will bring you to worship of one God.
So Christianity and Islam, which one is older than the other one?
Islam.
Yeah, but if Islam is older and is right, why are the Christians also believing that theirs is right as well?
Okay, so just to clarify why I say Islam is the oldest, the first man God created, the originator created, was on this state of Islam. Submission and surrender of his will to the will of one true God. As time went by, his progenies, some of them were prophets. Noah, Abraham, Moses,
So
peace be upon all them all.
came after Muhammad.
No. Before. All of these were before, but all the prophets and messengers, they brought the same message, which is Islam. Submission of your will, willingly and sincerely, to the will of one true God. So when Jesus Christ in Christianity, when he submitted his will to his God, in Arabic we say this is a Muslim, and his state of submission is Islam. Yeah.
But why is he talking about something different? Why did Jesus not talk about Islam? Why did
Jesus was talking about Islam. He says, worship the one and only true God. That is Islam.
Okay.
He says, follow me, listen to me, obey me. That is Islam. Because you follow and submit your will
to God?
And how is God's will known? Through the prophets. The prophets express the will of God. So you have to follow what God says to the prophet, and prophet says, God wants you to speak the truth. So Christ says, for example, love your neighbor.
So
If you follow that, then you are a Muslim.
But then, if Jesus was a prophet of Allah, why are the Christians worshipping Jesus?
Very good questions. Again, what kind of affiliation is this? This is again the emotional attachment and affiliation to someone. They love so dearly.
Christians in the world, there's so many of them. So
And so many of these Christians, they're enlightened and become Muslims because they see that point. Here is one example in front of you.
so you were a Christian before.
Yeah.
Okay.
But when I was a Christian, I never believed Jesus was God. It never made no sense because he never said he was God.
Okay.
If you read the Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, it doesn't tell you that. It tells you otherwise. I'll give you an example. In the Bible, God says he alone is immortal. What does immortal mean?
Not able to die.
So there's two things that doesn't apply to someone that's immortal. Crucifixion and resurrection. Would you agree or disagree?
I agree.
Because
But then
that would-
the Christians
Before
believe.
we go. So that means it disqualifies somebody who's been crucified, like me and you crucified, and we will resurrect. This also includes Jesus. So is Jesus, by that definition, is he mortal or immortal?
Mortal.
There you
That's your
go.
answer.
So even critical-minded, look,
Then the
critical
Christian-
thinking Christians, when they analyze what is there, remnants of this belief still available, they can see it from there that this doesn't make sense. From the
Okay.
teachings and the actions, it doesn't make sense. What makes sense is this individual is a Muslim, submitting, surrendering to God. And that's why people, when they look at it critically, they will say the only religion acceptable to follow is Islam.
But based on what I can see, the Christians believe in resurrection, which is why they celebrate Easter. So is that not true? That
As my brother explained, there cannot be a crucifixion and a resurrection to someone who is supposed to be God. If you're God, you're immune, exempt from death. That's what it means, immortal.
so that never happened.
No. If you are claiming, if the Christians claim Jesus is God, then he has to be immortal. If you're immortal, you have to be immune from death, exempt from death. You cannot die. The fact that they at the same time say he was dead, crucified, and resurrected, they have to then admit he cannot be God. You can't have both ways.
So it means that that didn't happen, or
No, what it
happened,
means,
but the Christians
they are
lied.
inconsistent in their belief. They're very inconsistent in belief. A belief which is inconsistent is a hallmark that it is not true. A belief which says, believe in a triangular square, in a married bachelor, is a belief which is not believable. Christianity in this form that is presenting itself is not believable. It cannot be true, because true belief will make sense. Islam, ask about the concept of God in Islam. God is one, unique, absolute, independent. God is someone who is not born, is not producing children. There's nothing like unto God. All of this interconnected, and it will make sense. That's what the Quran actually. Do you have a copy of the Quran, anyone? Do you mind opening for it? We can give it to
that's what I was gonna
our friend
give
here.
for you, so-
Yeah, that's one.
No.
Big one. Yeah.
Yeah, no. Do you mind opening? No, I've almost done it.
But he's written in Arabic. I don't understand.
No, brother. That's an assumption.
This is a
Oh, yeah, 'cause I've seen
this is
a
a
few.
translation.
This is a
Translation of the meaning of the Quran.
English.
Surah 112. There's 114 surahs in the Quran.
Okay.
Look at this surah or a chapter, right? Only 4 lines. Say he is God, one. And in a bracket, he will tell you what this one means, this word one means, right? He is single, unique, indivisible. Yeah?
So single, not marriage.
One means one, not two.
Okay.
Not
Not
united,
plural in numbers.
not divisible. Yep. Totally unique, one and only. Eternal refuge. And tell you this word, Samad, means someone, the one sought in times of difficulty and need, the one dependent upon by all existence, but he is himself independent. Meaning he is absolute, sovereign, self-sufficient, independent. Neither begets nor is he born. He doesn't have a lineage, father, mother, whatever, neither have a progeny afterwards. Now, nor is there to him any equivalent. There's nothing like him
nothing
in any comparison,
to him.
any way, shape, or form. So you can't imagine God is like that. God is like a human being. God is like an animal. God is like this. God is unlike anything. this concept of God to a critical-minded person who are sincere and seeking the truth, it will resonate in your heart and your mind and say, yeah, that makes sense. This is what I expect God to be. In my unadulterated thinking, in my critical understanding, this is what God should be. God should be sovereign, independent, absolute, unlike anything. God is not someone who is dependent on another being, that he was born and he produces other children, that he's no longer unique anymore. There will be someone like him if he produces children. If they're sons and daughters of God, they will be like him. So there will not be one God, there will be many gods. So this belief in the Quran itself is a testimony that it comes from the one and only true God.
So based on what you're saying now, the belief that the Christians that Jesus was the Son of God is not true.
Obviously, the belief that Christ, what did Christ say about himself? Did he say, I am a special Son of God? He used, this is interesting because when you read the scripture.
Because he was unborn based on what the Christians say.
Two things.
He was unborn through man and woman interaction.
Correct. So look at how human beings are born.
So
take the example of human beings, how they are born. All of us here are born through a male and a female. Mm-hmm. Yeah? Do you all agree?
Yeah.
Or someone just born without no father, no mother? Right. Male and a female. Adam, alayhi salam, peace be upon him, Adam, the first man God created, was in existence, brought into existence from no male and no female. Mm-hmm. We, from male and female, Adam from no male, no female. That's two. Eve, or Hawa, alayhi salam, came from the ribs of Adam, from a man. So her existence is from a man, not a woman, from a man alone. So far, from a man and a woman, from no man, no woman, from a man alone. What's left in permutations and combinations? From a woman alone. Jesus Christ came from woman alone. Now, which is more miraculous? To come from the wombs of a woman, which is designed to produce babies anyway, or to come from the ribs of a man, or to come from no man, no woman? Which is more miraculous?
Yeah, but...
No.
Which is more miraculous? Which is more profound and amazing? To come from the ribs of a man, or from the wombs of a woman?
Yeah, but... based on, like, stories, like the first man, like if he was created from nothing, yeah, that's the one I know, but then, and the woman was created from the man.
Yes.
But then the Christians believe that Jesus came
from Mary, from the wombs of a mother, Mary, yes?
So if he was just a prophet, why was...
Let's come back to this point. I am not digressing. I want to establish one thing first. What's amazing about his creation? Is it amazing at all or not? So, I want you to tell me, creating someone from the wombs of a woman or from the ribs of a man, which is more fantastic?
Just on that,
from the ribs of a woman. But then why?
If he was that's it. Mm-hmm. Let's take step by step. So, if that was the case, where it's more fantastic to create someone from the ribs of a man or a male, and if you base the criteria of making someone God or Son of God because of a special creation, then they are more in their right to worship Eve rather than Jesus Christ. Because his birth is less of a miraculous thing than the birth or the creation or the origination of Eve, coming from the ribs of a man. If that was a criteria to making someone special, he's a son of God and a God because he was born of a virgin, be sensible. Eve is more of a worthy individual for your worship in that particular line of thinking. But we now know that that is not a criteria for someone being worshipped. This is how God has created us in all these 4 different combinations and computations to demonstrate his creative might. He can create human beings from no father and no mother, from a mother alone, from a father alone, from a mother and a father. It doesn't make anything or anyone less special, but it just demonstrates God is in control. He is the one who is possessor of might. So when God said He's going to make Christ and His mother as signs for the people, now we realize how they are signs, because this is one of the ways God has demonstrated His creative power of creating human beings. Now, just because the Christians believe He was born of a virgin, does that somehow elevate Him of His status of being a son of God, like God the Son? What did Christ say Himself?
But the Christians believe that Jesus died, resurrected, and went to heaven. So
If you die and you resurrect and want to go to heaven, would that make you God?
yeah, but is that true? Is it?
But before we talk about the truthfulness of these things,
Okay.
if you die and you resurrect and you go to heaven, would it make you God?
No.
Precisely.
Why not?
Precisely.
But then,
The whole Christianity belief and its theology crumbles by looking at the criteria. You want to make Christ so special because of X, Y, and Z? Look at X, Y, and Z individually. So Christ did miracles. So did other prophets. If that makes Him God, the other prophets are also God. Christ raised someone from the dead. So did Paul. The disciple, Paul, self-appointed
Why
disciple.
call the definition of God first before
Yeah.
we go into anything else? Once
Yeah.
you learn that who is God, then
It's okay. It's okay. We have talked about it already. So now, if Paul can raise someone from the dead, as the Bible affirms, it doesn't make him God. Why would it make Jesus God? Why would it make other people? In fact, there were individuals who were also touched by the bones of like a cow or something and brought them back to life. In the children of Israel, they have a history. It doesn't make them God.
but then the thing is, when you talk about Paul and all these people that came after Jesus, based on what the Christians say, these people preached Christianity.
These people were preaching the message of Christ, the gospel of Christ. And the
Okay.
gospel of Christ got corrupted. To give you an example,
So, but then
Let me give you an example.
If they're preaching the gospel of Christ, then it means the gospel of Christ has some attachment to Quran.
exactly.
Is that the case?
Yeah. So what happened is, where is the gospel of Christ? If I were to tell you the gospel according to Judas, gospel according to Ebionites, gospel according to St. Thomas, gospel according to, say,
Magdalene.
Mary Magdalene. Okay, 4 gospels. Let's limit it to that. There are 49 gospels. None of those 4 that I mentioned now, we mentioned together, they are not in the Bible of the Christians today. But there are gospels attributed to Christ, that Christ said so, Christ taught so. The Christians say these are forgeries. Were they written by Muslims? The answer is no. They are before Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was born. This was when they were written. So Christians are telling us they were whole-scale forgery in the name of God. People were writing left, right, and center and attributing these books to God when they were all forgeries. They were all lies against God. They only chose 4 out of those many, many that were written. So the question is, when people were tampering with the message of God, in the case of Christ, with His gospel of God, how do they know what was His gospel? They haven't got any way to establish that. Because why? They are so contradictory. And the mystery that they tell you about how these were selected is very fishy, to say the least. Leave you in the room and then you come back. No, do you know the story? Okay? I mean, maybe it's a rumor, it's a story. This is what we've heard. I would like to know, you would like to know, what is the truth behind it? They put all this gospel on the table, closed the room, came back next day or some other time, and they found only the 4 gospels are on the table, rest on the floor. That's how these are authentic. Come on, common sense will tell you. I mean, nonsense. To understand the truthfulness of something, you have to see what it says. So why are they contradictory in terms of the Gospels even today the Bible has? Why are they contradicting what the Old Testament has? Do you know why the rainbow is in the sky? It's important to know why the rainbow is in the sky. It's there for a purpose, to remind God. If He's about to destroy mankind again, when He looks at the clouds and He sees the rainbow, it will remind Him not to destroy again. Does that make sense? Does it make sense to you? God needs to be reminded by a rainbow. That's there in the Old Testament of the Jewish and Christian Bible. You, as a critical-minded person, will say, Come on, I mean, I can believe in lots of mysterious things, but this tells you it's definitely not from God. God is all knowledgeable. He doesn't need reminded by a rainbow. He is immortal. He doesn't die. He doesn't get crucified. He doesn't need to resurrect. All of this. People believe in Christianity. Do you know why people believe in Christianity? Currently, some people believe in Christianity. In fact, most people leave Christianity today. They leave to other non-beliefs and so on. Those who are coming in a little number is because they have a gap, a hole in their heart because of materialism. Materialist ideology, secularist, humanist, this ideology have made a hole in their heart. They can't feel anything. There's something missing. The love, the tranquility, the connection is missing. Because atheism is nothing but nihilism, total nihilism. You are here, there is no difference between you and a piece of stone. Nothing. You are just particles rearranged in this matter. There is no meaning of life. You die and they all disappear. There is no meaning of life. So when they look at this and they realize, but there's something the heart tells me. There's a purpose behind my creation. There's a purpose why there's justice. There's purpose behind, there's something self-evident. When you snatch a toy from a 3-year-old child, the child says, give it to me, it's mine. They know justice has been violated. Inherently, you know something that is unjust and not just, something that is wrong. Rape, you would know whether you like raping or not, that's the wrong thing. And people still rape because knowing that it's wrong. Stealing is wrong, they're still doing it. So the hole that they have with this materialism, they try to find somewhere solace. You know where they go to? They go to find Eastern religions, spirituality and others. And within these times, they somehow come across Christian communities and they express their love. Oh, God loves you and so on. They say, yeah, I need love. And that's why the attachment is blind emotional attachment, not critical thinking. Those who critically think, they would not.
Does the Quran preach that God loves?
The Quran says God doesn't love everyone. His love is conditional. He doesn't love the rapist. He doesn't love the oppressor. Why would God love a rapist? Tell me. Those people who say God loves everyone. Yeah, God loves those who purify themselves and so on. That's what he was saying. Of course, absolutely. Why would God love a rapist? Is God endorsing the action of rape by loving him? Makes no sense. God loves those who are doing his works, sincere, just, truthful, righteous.
What if those ones that they don't know, they've not heard about God?
Good question.
Good question. God tells us that there is not a nation that has gone by that he has not sent prophets and messengers, warners to them. Because he's just. He's not going to tell a community, he's not going to punish a community. And these people said, why are we punished? No one told us anything what to do and what is right, what is wrong. They will have an excuse. But God removed this excuse by sending prophets and messengers. What happens is, there may be occasional times when people are in between the two prophets. The Ahlul Fatra, for example. So God not only will judge them on the intellect. God tells us in the Quran, when certain people who are deserving of going to hellfire because of their arrogant disbelief, angels are dragging them in chains. I'm answering.
I don't believe that.
Can I answer? Can I finish the answer? When these people are dragged into hellfire by the angels of hellfire, the angels will ask them, did they not come to you, warners, prophets, messengers, reminding of you this day, talking about this? Do you know what they will say? Yes, they came. But we belied them, we rejected them, we denied them. And then they will confess. Had we but listened to them, the prophets, the messengers, the warners, or used our aql, our intellect, we would not have ended up in this place. So, do you understand my point?
Yeah, I understand.
That means the role of the intellect will be questioned. Did you use your intellect when there was no pure revelation and prophets around? Did you use that to reject the falsehood? Or did you simply live like a cattle, or even less than a cattle, without your intellect? Then you will not be able to justify your belief. Because God gave you a faculty of intellect. Even with that, you can affirm there is only one creator, Look, when I talk to you about there's only one creator, I didn't quote anything from the Quran. I didn't quote a verse from the Quran. And you understood it. The intellect understood it. There can only be one creator. There can only be one that we can submit ourselves, our will to. So the intellect is capable of truth about this God, that God exists. God is one. He deserves our worship, that we will have to worship God, otherwise we will be doomed. The intellect alone can come to this conclusion. So when people have not heard, as you said, if they haven't used their intellect properly, sound intellect that God gave them as an amana, as a trust, then they will be at their own consequences, whatever comes to them in the form of justice, because God is not to the least unjust to his creation. So they will be dealt with it justly, and if it even means they will go to hellfire because they did not appropriately use the tool that God gave acquainted with them. Yep, to use it. If children die, of course, there are narrations. Either they go to paradise directly, or God will offer them a test. Because God knows the outcome, but he will offer them a test and see whether they're able to. Like, for example, God says, see, you see me the reality, go, say jump into the fire. If you know the reality, you would listen, right? Satan knows God. He knows God is his creator. Now, if he still disobeys, knowingly, what's going to happen? The consequences is his. Likewise, there will be tests, you believe? That can be done. People who didn't have the opportunity because they died young and so on, they will be treated justly. God is not unjust to the least to his creation. So the example I gave you, Christians and Hindus and other people, the reasons why people are not changing their belief system is this peer pressure, social bonding, families. Oh, if I become someone like this, what's going to happen to me? People will call it like, oh, I become a fundamentalist, a fanatic, and ideologue, and so on and so forth. This kind of fear in their hearts, even though they know the truth. They know Islam is true, but they don't want to make that jump to declare with their own tongue that Islam is true, because they fear certain loss from their family, from their friends, from their community, and so on and so forth. But what they need to realize, who's going to save you in the hereafter? Your friends? Your family? Your community? Or is it your own belief and your action? Your own belief and your action. So if you want to be saved from the hellfire, then you shouldn't just simply be enslaved to this pressure from your community, from your family, from your friends and so on. When you see the truth, accept it.
What is the proof that hellfire actually exists?
If God is demonstrated to be true, he says there's hellfire, I don't have to see hellfire to believe in it, because he spoke the truth. God speaks the truth and he tells us there's going to be hellfire, I accept it. Once you affirm to me that I am a qualified surgeon, you come to me, you see my qualifications, professional body registrations, you see the attestations of all the previous patients that are waiting, hardly any appointment, they say, okay, even next week I want this doctor. Then you will trust me even for your heart surgery. I say that, I want to open up your heart and do some bypass, you will say, yeah. You will, with peace and contentment, take this pill or this injection, the anesthesia, and you will go to sleep and you will be operated on. You will not feel any doubt, what's going to happen to me? This doctor, is he really a fake or not? Because you already have this trust and confidence. When you have trust and confidence and affirmation that the God is your creator, Quran is the revelation, whatever the God and Quran tells us, we accept it. Sami'na wa ata'na. We hear and we obey, because there's no reason to disbelieve in our creator when we affirm him, when our creator is what he has said. That is the confidence one has. When you know your mother is your mother, what do? You will protect her, care for her, love her, no matter at what cost. At what cost? You will save her. You will not even sleep and wake up besides her. She is safe, she is calm, she is healthy, and so on and so forth. That is the commitment that you will make once you know the truth, once you know who she is, once you know God is your creator, once you know and affirm in your heart. This is how you will affirm in what God says about Day of Judgment, about hell, about heaven. But do you know what something else God does? He also gives us reasons to believe in heaven, reasons to believe in hellfire. He gives us mechanisms how people will be punished in hellfire. He gives us examples how people will be rewarded in heaven. He gives us reasons why there has to be a day of judgment. He gives us a mechanism how this will happen. These all consolidates, makes stronger, and empowers you to be a strong believer, a strong Muslim. It doesn't shake. So when all these isms and ideologies comes to you, oh, I hear about Sikhism, Buddhism, Zainism, atheism, all that, you will say, none of them make sense, because you can go and scrutinize them and you can assess them. The only thing that makes sense is what you know your heart and your mind is in line with, in sync with what the Quran affirms to you. It's not difficult to become a Muslim. It's difficult to become a Muslim if you are someone who goes by the flow without being critical minded, without having an attachment, a love to the truth, and no attachment to sincerity. People who are sincere, seeking, loving the truth, use their sound judgment, they will see the obvious clarity of the truth of Islam and they will embrace it. And as people are doing, Speaker's Corner, do you know, if you look at the trajectory, almost every week people are becoming Muslim just by looking at the message of Islam. Why? Because no one is forcing them. There is no gun in their head saying you become a Muslim, otherwise, we're going to kill you or something. No. What they have done is they have made themselves free from the enslavement of their own desires, enslavement of the society, of the culture of celebrity and so on and so forth, of their emotions. They left all of that and say, look, I need to know where the truth lies. And they see the truth and embrace it. So Matis, if you are someone who is truthfully seeking what the reality is, it's there in front of you. All you need to do is affirm it, scrutinize and affirm it.
I'll have a read.
Yeah. Does it make sense that there is only one true God worthy of worship?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But
Does it make sense to worship that one true God by following His messenger that He sends? Yeah. So all you need to do is look at the final messenger, what he has brought, the Quran, his life, his teaching, his biography. If we have time, we can go through this. Next time, if you're here, we can go through it. I think this is a good introduction for you to reflect on. Okay? You take care, Mansur.
Thank you.
Okay? All the best.
Yeah.
Barakallah feekum. Thank you.